Chris Howell has served in law enforcement for 7 years and has recently moved over to Flock Security for the last 2 years, where he assists with people who are transitioning from the public to the private sector. Chris runs what could be considered a peer support program, which provides resources and support for those leaving the law enforcement profession and heading into private sector work. We have asked him on today to discuss his work. This is Lifeline. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Lifeline 911 with your host, Erica.
Hello.
I'm your co-host, Gary, and today we are very thankful to have on Chris Howell with us today. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So I give sort of a brief introduction to what you do and what your program is, but could you tell us a little bit more about how exactly you're helping people that are going from, law enforcement to the private sector, and kind of why would that be needed? I mean, in the private sector, do they not do the exact same things that we do on a daily basis?
I wish that they did. That way, the transition process would be a little bit different. But part of the things that we've established with the law enforcement employee resource group is basically that transition window, right? So a lot of cops come from the private sector, and they have a lot of the same personality traits, very type A, resistant to change, not wanting to be flexible in a lot of different things because they've already got a process that works. Cops, in terms of psychological attributes, are very easy to read, and especially coming from law enforcement for 7 years, I can spot a cop in a crowd in a matter of seconds. And so with that kind of brings a certain personality trait into the workplace. But that personality that is brought into the workplace isn't the same personality that was in the workplace in the public sector. After you're leaving the public sector and being exposed to a lot of different things, such as traumatic events, riots, you name it, there's a plethora of things that cops are exposed to, that when they leave law enforcement, that transition phase of my body is going into a natural homeostasis phase is a very jarring experience, because you're not used to having such a normal baseline leveled response in terms of how you feel about your day-to-day life, right? Because most times officers, even dispatchers, everybody in the law enforcement community has got to be on high alert because of just that's the natural progression of your career. Is the more you get exposed to it, the more alert you're going to be, because those dangers that lie outside. With that, when you go into the private sector, that's not the reality anymore. You're in a very sterile environment. There's not a lot of things that are out there trying to harm you, because you're not in a uniform. You're not driving around in a vehicle that's labeled police, and you're no longer a target. And so being able to establish this employee resource group has really helped us with the folks that have transitioned from the public sector into the private sector with that mental aspect of it, by providing peer support, by providing just generalized support, reminders of hey, these are things to keep in mind. So Suicide Awareness Prevention Month, we had a nice post about that of hey, these are the staggering statistics with law enforcement that we don't ever address. We're still a part of the law enforcement community, and that doesn't make us immune to that. And so we want to raise awareness of what the stress and the triggers can happen to those folks that are leaving law enforcement, coming into the private sector, and just being able to provide more awareness and support to those folks that have left that area.
That is, I can absolutely see the need for that, because just as someone who had to transition from one law enforcement agency to another, and in between, I went back ever so briefly into not corporate, but just the private sector.
Yeah.
And of all places, it was customer service. Really, from 911 dispatch to customer service. Let me just say, it did not go well. It was my idea of customer service is present me with the problem, and the critical thinker in me is going to fix your problem. I'm not going to smile at you while I do it. I'm not going to have a smile in my tone while I do it. What's the problem? I have tools. Let me fix it. Get off my phone. It did not go. It didn't work out.
I think you bring up a really good point there, right? So when you say that you were in customer service, I'm in customer service, right? Because the stakeholders that I report to now are the folks that I need to provide results to internally in my company. My previous customers were people that were shot, stabbed, robbed. They've gone through a horribly traumatic incident. And so transitioning from I need a spreadsheet by the end of the day is a very weird experience, right? Because it's like I need to go and save someone's life in one career, and then now I'm going over to I need to like make a PowerPoint, and so like that in and of itself is just a completely different mindset, and it's like that's my customer base now. My customer base has changed, and so my mentality has to change, and the way that I respond to those things has to change because when I'm responding to a stabbing, I should not be responding to a senior vice president of customer success with the same exact response, right? Like that is just a completely different world and a completely different
Yes,
communication style.
that is
Yeah,
so
we
interesting.
we had I think on the last episode, Erica, we were talking about how you'd gotten a text from somebody that was like, "Call me, it's an emergency," and
Yeah.
so
Yes,
like you called them and you're like, "Okay, where's the body gonna be?" And they're like, "Oh, I had some minor issue, like they gave me they gave me decaf instead of calf or something,"
Yeah.
and it's just a different mentality.
It is. And it takes adjustment.
Like,
And especially for those folks that like are in those really high intense situations. So like canine handlers, SWAT officers, like when they do make that transition, it is a very jarring experience because of just the intensity of their role to begin with prior to leaving law enforcement and now coming to like an administrative sterile environment. Like it's really hard to change that mentality that quickly because like 1 week you're out catching people that were breaking into cars and you had to release the dog, and then now you're like I gotta make a map of all these devices and send this over to somebody. Like it's a completely different world.
and like you said, I think when we were visiting, when we were setting this all up, it doesn't that fight or flight mentality that we're all in, we pretty much stay there. Even if you are not a police officer, you can be a call taker, you can be a dispatcher, you could even be a supervisor or someone that is in an emergency call center or in law enforcement. We all share that ready set go mentality. And so for us, when you present us with a problem, we're like, okay, strip it down to the studs. What's first? So, I mean, you would agree with that, right? Or no?
100%. Like, and I think that like I was thinking of a most recent example of where like a process change didn't go well, right? And like the way that we would like handle that in law enforcement is like you'd said, stripping it down to the barest problem because we have the opportunity, we have the skills, and we know how to do that, and it's just a natural progression of like problem solving. But that sort of opportunity goes away within the private sector because then we're moving this fast. We have to keep up with innovation. We have to keep up with this. We have to keep up with that. So this process change that maybe didn't go so well, we don't have time to break it down and go like, all right, this is what we did wrong, and this is where we need to like make changes. It's more like, well, what can we do to like hurry up and like fix this now so that way we can move
Yeah.
on to the next project, which is similar to law enforcement. But I think in law enforcement to that degree, like time is on your side when you're in law enforcement because you have the opportunity to take a second, like unless you're working on a code, right? Like that's completely different. But like if you're investigating a larceny, if you're investigating a robbery, if you're investigating some like it's something outside of
Mhm.
the life endangering situations, time is on your side. And I like that is something that I truly miss from a law enforcement perspective because I could give more time into thinking like through those incidents and having a better resolution.
Yeah. And you would have the opportunity, like, so as you were describing what you were talking about, I'm thinking the AAR, which is the after action review. That's where we live, right? We go back and we go, okay. What didn't work? Who didn't do what? What button did we push that we shouldn't have pushed, or it should have been a lever versus a button? And we don't have any problem calling out each other in the areas where we fell short. But I would imagine in your current environment, you have to sterilize that a little bit. So that that communication difference, just how do you help someone through that?
That is what. I'm no expert, right? I still experience growing pains as anybody else does when they transition from the public sector into the private sector, and a lot of that is exposure and hand slapping. Like it sounds like being an FTO all over again, right? Because
Oh
you're
my
not going to
gosh.
necessarily know what's the right thing to say all the time, but you have to do it with diplomacy and tact and grace. And sometimes when you think about law enforcement, those are not the top three skills that they typically possess.
So,
And so you have to step back, look at your peers, and analyze how are your peers providing feedback? How are your peers going about communicating with this person? What do I do? I typically will go to folks that I have been in this career for 10 years because I've only been in this career for 2 years. Um, Same age, same life, like we're in the same part of life, but they have 10 years of experience on me on how to handle these more like intense situations in the corporate setting. And you have to learn from them because they're the ones that are going to provide you with the most like anecdotal truth
mhm.
processing situations that they've experienced and what works well for them. Because how you go through an after action review, and I know that you're like, who didn't do what, who didn't do this, but it's not in a personal way. It's more like, where did we slip, and like what do we
Yeah,
need to do to make it better?
yeah.
And I think that there's a lot more of that in the public sector than there is in the private sector because there's a political environment that surrounds a lot of the actions moving forward in a company, where it's like within law enforcement, if we don't do better next time, you could probably die, right? And so like
Yeah.
we need to have these conversations, and they need to be harsh and they need to be critical, but they also need to be constructive. And I think that like law
Yes.
enforcement does an amazing job at that.
I love how you said, did you have something, Gary? Because you already know I'm
No,
going to
it's
take
all,
you over.
go,
Okay.
go ahead.
So they're used to it. So I love how you said going to someone who has the experience that you lack, right? So you have gifts, you have talent, you have things that you bring to the table. That's all well and good, but you still need to be willing to humble yourself enough to go to someone who knows what you do not know, and allow them to instruct you.
Yeah,
I
just
don't know that
like
that's so easy for us to do as law enforcement sometimes.
I try to break it down into a concept that everybody that goes through law enforcement, that everybody that has worked in like the public side, either private or like civilian or not, right? There's always a training process. You're always going to go through some type of training course. You're going to go through some type of training, like mentality, exercise. Like there's always going to be training, right?
Sure.
When you started that training, you started becoming a call taker, you started becoming a dispatcher, you started becoming a police officer. What did you know going into that? You knew absolutely nothing other than what was given to you in training. And so then now you're into that next phase where it's like now you're doing the practical application. Do you retain everything that you learned in training? Absolutely not.
No.
You only retain a small portion of what it is. And then once you get out into the real world, then those things that you realize that, oh, I learned this at some point in class,
Uh-huh.
but the practical application in theory that you learn in a classroom or that you learn in an academy or that you learn in training isn't always 100% applicable into the field. Like that is written for you in a sterile environment of there's no distractions, there's nothing trying to kill you, there's nothing trying to bother you, the radio isn't going off in your ear, you don't have your FTO sitting there screaming at you, whatever it may be.
Yep.
And then you change the environment. And how are you learning? You're learning through hands-on application, and you're learning from watching your peers because you don't know how to do a crime scene your first day. And so like painting it into that perspective of like, yeah, like your peers are going to be your best source of knowledge and your best resources. And you've had to do this in the past, and you're not like, this isn't a new thing for you. So it shouldn't be like something that should be that daunting. even though I know that it is daunting, you break it down like that, and it kind of like, it helps put them at ease, right? Like, okay, you did this as well. Like, I don't feel as
Mhm.
bad about it.
That is so well said because I'm thinking, at Gary and I, and I'm sure you did as well, when we have new people come into our environment now, and these are grown adults, right? And so adult learners are incredibly hard on themselves when they don't do well,
Absolutely.
and coming back into a learning mentality, learning mode, learning attitude. It's hard because as adults, we're accustomed to knowing what we're doing, and even if it's just in our own head, knowing or believing that we do it well. So to submit to that training, learning mentality, I can see how that can be beneficial for you to say to someone as you begin to mentor them or peer support, if you will. First things first, know that you don't know everything and you are now back in a learning training mode. Get used to that, own it, live it, breathe it. Would that be accurate? Because I can hear myself saying that right now.
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. And I think where that resistance comes from is what you had just said before that, right? You're leaving a job that you were the know-it-all. You knew everything. You were the top dog. You had everything going on, right? Like you knew how to do this job, and people were probably relied on you. And the new folks were the ones asking you questions. And now we're resetting that cycle. And when we reset that cycle, that's where it becomes mentally uncomfortable because you haven't been there for X amount of years
Yeah.
and you're not used to that, and you go through a lot of growing pains. And that's the crux of the reason why is because you're starting your life all over again, essentially.
Yeah. That is that is so good. I'm curious. So I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this question. How do how does the leadership in a company like Flock, if you can speak to it as generically as possible, is there a lot of grace? Do they give a lot of grace to these people coming in because they know where we came from and they know we're a little different? Do they give us any grace?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think like you have more grace within a company than you do within like law enforcement job, right? Because you are not under a microscope. You are not being looked at from a legal perspective of like, did you follow the law every single day? Did you do this policy and procedure? You don't have IA watching over your shoulder. There
Mhm.
are going to be so many mess ups that you make along the way that they're like, we get it. The best part about it though is when you get a manager that is former law enforcement, they understand because they've went through the same exact thing that you've went through. They went through the same mental like constraints that you went through, the same experiences, relatively close. And when you have those really bad days, or you have a day where you're like, I can't stop making mistakes, they're like, okay, cool. Did anyone die? Nope. Let's go on, figure it out, right? Like, I think that's the best. And I've luckily I've had a manager that was former law enforcement, and she's probably like she will forever be one of the best people that I've ever worked with because like I myself went through like a horrible mental health phase where it's like I needed to go to therapy multiple times a week. And like she was the person that was like, I get it. You don't need to tell me this. Like you don't need to tell me like what you're doing. She's like, I get it. Take care of you because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't come to work and we can't rely on you to be as responsible and as good as what you're doing. And so like having that type of support is just phenomenal for somebody coming out of law enforcement and just trying to figure out like what the heck is this, and you're treading water the entire time.
Yeah.
It is. It is. Seems like such a huge paradigm shift because I remember Erica and I a couple of months ago went up to a podcast conference. As part of Lifeline, and they had this one after conference day where it was a free open bar, and I was there and I was like, oh, I can go get a beer. I'm wearing my Lifeline shirt, but I could still go get a beer. Uh, and like it's such a different mentality in um, the the public sector than it is the private sector because well I guess at least in law enforcement, you usually don't hear about them going out to conferences and like, getting a beer or something, right?
I don't know where you work, but
Well,
sometimes it's a little bit different wherever you live. I will say that. So I'm going to say no comment.
okay, fair enough, fair enough. But for me, it was just like a different kind of like I can have a beer in my
Yes.
work shirt, and that's not something that 99% of people ever think about. Like,
Because you don't go out and get a beer in your uniform. Like, that's
you
absolutely
shouldn't.
not. You
Or
I
should
don't know
not.
about where you work, but okay.
well, you raise a good point, Gary, because I remember, and actually I didn't think about it because until right now when you said that, we were working but not working. And in law enforcement, you're always on
On
duty, whether
duty.
you really want to accept that or not, it is the reality of it. And so it's always in the back of your mind, decisions that you make, whether you're out representing the agency or not. So I would imagine I mean, some of that is probably still true for, let's just, because Flock is the company that we're talking about right now. But if you guys go out and have you know, I don't know, Christmas party and there's somebody spikes the eggnog or you pay the company to spike the eggnog, it's not going to be as bad of a big deal, right? That it's okay. And you probably have people who have to learn to relax.
So, like, I'll speak for our company, right? Like, we have annual get-togethers, like where we bring because our entire company is remote, and so we like bring all of our employees to Atlanta once a year, so that way we can do like an in-person, like, hey, let's like do a conference, do some learnings, whatever it may be. But
Wow.
alcohol is a part of that because, like, that's after 5 o'clock, that's what you do. You go out and you have drinks with your coworkers, and then you go out to dinner, and then you go out for more drinks, and that's just life, right? Like you're probably leaving the hotel that you just had your conference in. You're wearing your flock safety shirt and you're walking down the street to the other bar to go and have drinks with your team for a happy hour before you go and have dinner and drink somewhere else. And so uh very different like culture shift, right? Because like in law enforcement, it's like you can do that and that's okay after a conference, but you need to be very careful because like one, are you carrying your gun with you? Are you carrying your badge with you? Are you wearing any type of like PD memorabilia that's going to associate you with this? And then also,
Well,
are you going to be able to control yourself enough that where it's like if you are out in public and you are wearing something that is related to your PD, what is that going to do if you get arrested, or what is that going to do if you end up on TikTok, or what if the like just things like that I don't have to worry about anymore because it's like if I do something crazy at a bar, I'm wearing a flock safety shirt. Like
Yeah.
that's not a representation of a government organization.
yeah, yeah, that is absolutely the truth of it. And I just think there's so many things that you don't think about or one wouldn't think about making that transition coming from our environment because we have people that leave the profession all the time, whether it be sworn or not, and they think they're just going to go out into the public, the private sector, and you know live happily ever after, riding off into the sunset. And it's so funny they come back because it's no longer familiar to them, and they didn't know how to transition. So you raised an excellent point in the pre-show, I want to say, that you don't just mentor or counsel, maybe counsel is too strong a word, just people who are looking to come work at Flock.
Yeah. And so part of that is like, you develop a LinkedIn profile and that obviously makes you publicly searchable. And so like
Okay.
part of my process of leaving the public sector and going into the private sector was using LinkedIn to find former cops that have left law enforcement to connect with and build a network with to how like to establish that relationship to get in my foot into the door for that company. That goes on every single day. I'm not the person that's like doing it every single day. People in law enforcement are doing that every single day and, reaching out, cold calling, cold emailing me and saying like, hey, I saw that you were in law enforcement. Can you help me transition out? I want to pick your brain. And so a part of the employee resource group that we've established is like our board members are very actively monitoring our LinkedIn. And we try to do like there's some of us get a lot more messages than others, and so it's hard for us to like be able to answer all of them.
Mhm.
But what we typically will do is like we will set up a call with that person, 15-20 minutes just to talk about like, hey, these are the best practices that we've experienced and how to transition out of law enforcement. Depending on like how that conversation goes, I will typically like I will say, hey, send me your resume. Let me take a look at your resume, and I'll give you some pointers as to like what does it look like transitioning your law enforcement resume to a corporate resume. Because you could go and say like I've made 5,000 arrests and seized over 7,000 guns, whatever it may be, but in corporate, we're like, what does that mean? Right? Like, that doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
And so helping them understand, like, what is the jargon? What is the communication style that it looks like on a resume? Because you can submit your cop resume, but they're never going to take a look at it because that means nothing to them.
Yeah. It
Um,
doesn't. Yeah.
and like part of that too is like like my experience is very like limited to what it is that I know, but we've got a whole bunch of we have over 101 officers that were former law enforcement folks that are in this employee resource group. That like if there's somebody
Wow.
that comes to me and I'm like, hey, I don't know anything about this, I can tap on to somebody else and they're happy to step up and say, let me chat with that person, let me talk to them, let me see what I can do to help them get their foot in the door through that next step. Because we all know what it's like when you're like in that space and trying to make that transition. And we just because we support the folks at Flock Safety, that's our main mission and goal. That's not going
Sure.
to stop us from extending out beyond our company because we want folks to know like this is a great place to work and this is a great place to be and it is a very supportive locate like it's a very supportive company, and so that extends through its employees and how we go that extra mile to help support those folks that are either already our customers, maybe might not be our customers. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter to us. They're still law enforcement because we want to, that's what our mission and our goal is to help everybody that needs our help that we possibly can and give them a positive experience with Flock, even if they might not necessarily become an employee or are an employee.
That is, that's amazing. So I had no idea your bench was so deep. Over a
Yeah.
hundred officers. That's
Yes.
insane.
Officers, former dispatchers. I think we've got one firefighter in there if we even want to count them as a first responder, but
Yeah.
we can debate that later.
Ah, that's awesome. I know a couple of those dispatchers. I ain't gonna say their names.
Uh, Same. They're great people though.
Yes. Yes, they are.
So, what, I guess, in terms of the trends, do you kind of see with people's biggest challenges in going from public safety to the private sector in terms of like the number one thing is always that they get really pissed off whenever the people are like, "Oh, I've got a really big problem," and you're like, your Excel spreadsheet just isn't totaling right. That's not like you've been stabbed." You know that I don't know. Like, what are kind of the hardest parts of the transition that you kind of have noticed as just sort of a anecdotal trend?
I don't know if this is going to be surprising or not, and I don't think it will be, but the loss of purpose, and that is such a like hard thing to help people with because when you're in law enforcement and you are constantly providing to the community, you put yourself second. You're always going to be second in comparison to the community. Whatever, like the community is always the number one priority because you're there for that their safety and their well being, right?
Yes.
You go into an office environment and your purpose is to fill out decks and spreadsheets. When you go from a job that is so dynamic to such a sterile environment of just not being shot at, not providing the assistance to somebody that's broken down on the side of the road, like providing life-saving measures,
Mhm.
it's really hard to say like, what is the purpose of this PowerPoint? Why am I doing this? And what benefit is this going to have for anybody? In
Yeah.
trying to translate the value of your own personal sanity is the value that you're providing to yourself, and it's not always going to be extrinsic. Now you have to focus on what value are you providing to yourself and your family because you have that opportunity now, and it's not something that they're used to.
That is beautifully said because as you were saying that I'm going back to my time at Kate Spade, New York. You see my eye twitching? I get a twitch when I think about
Yes.
it because oh God. I literally I didn't know what to call it until right now. And while I knew I was headed back into law enforcement, it was just relocating from one state to another, and I made a stop as I'm in the middle of that. That's it exactly. It is what I don't understand what the purpose is here.
Yeah.
What am I doing? I know how to mechanically do. Yes, I can help you with your green purse. Ugh.
Right.
But but I don't understand. No one needs the skills that I have. Talk
Right.
to me if you CPR, I got you. Somebody breaking into your house all day, every day. I got it. Officer needs assistance all day. Your purse? I don't understand. And why are you crying on my phone about that? And I'm struggling to care because there's nothing, there's no urgency. And that's it. That's it exactly. The purpose.
Yeah.
The purpose was missing.
And that's a hard thing for law enforcement, regardless of your role, to comprehend, because you're going from, like I said, with looking at the SWAT officers or looking at canine, where it's like I just did a dog release last week, and now I have to fill out this spreadsheet. Like, how do you mentally take going from providing a community service into a private sector mentality and providing purpose again to yourself? And that's where I kind of turned it around, those conversations around back onto them of like, this is, you've provided so much service to the community that you've never taken the opportunity to provide fulfillment within yourself. Like, this is the opportunity to invest back into yourself, because you have a job that you don't have to work overnight. You have a job where you're not being shot at and people are trying to kill you. You have a job where you're not constantly getting into fights. You have a job where you don't have to work holidays, so you can spend time with your family. Like, that is your purpose and value now versus what it used to be in law enforcement. And also, like, I love training, right? Like, training and development has always been like my passion, because I was an FTO, I worked in our academy, I taught general instructor school. Like, I did all of that, and that's something that's just ingrained into me. And my purpose within our company and my full-time role is doing that. I help train like our sales reps, I help train our customer success managers, our pre-sales folks, because that's what I like to do, and that gives me purpose. I get to still give my skills back to somebody else. And sometimes it takes a little bit of configuring and recalibrating your mind as to what is this new homeostasis and how am I going to move forward with what this new sense of like life and purpose is.
Yeah, and I think that
Amazing.
those of us that are in like sort of the public sector, the law enforcement, EMS, firefighters, we put up with a lot of crap in our job, and a lot of crappy things, like, as you were saying, nights, weekends, holidays, mandatory overtime, all of that. But a lot of times people don't realize the benefit that you get from it, because those that are attracted to sort of these professions tend to stay here a long time, are getting that, I don't know if you'd call it a dopamine hit of, hey, I just did CPR on this baby and saved him. Hey, I just responded to this fire and put it out. Hey, I just arrested this, rapist, or, whatever it is. You get that hit of, I fixed something right now. Here's something tangible. Here's something visible. This is what I did. Here's my purpose. And losing that by, as you were saying, going into, I got to fill out 16 Excel spreadsheets, by Friday. You've got to find a way to replace that with something that's just as meaningful. Otherwise, you're going to feel, I think, so empty, and that's not going to be a hole that you can fill with bonuses, with higher salary, with weekends off. It's going to make you feel like you're a hollow person. And I think that may be why a lot of people that leave law enforcement tend to kind of just become husks of their former selves, because they've created so much of their own character as, I'm the hero here. I'm going in and changing these things. And they have a hard time of going from Superman to Clark Kent.
And like I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but I've been in law enforcement long enough that like I know sort of like just that mentality there. And Greg, I think you made like a really great point. And I think a lot of it has to do with being addicted to adrenaline, right? Like you are always seeking that thrill. What is the next thing that's going to make me excited? What is the next thing that's going to make me excited? Especially in law enforcement, it's like you, I got to go to this code. I have to go to this like breaking and entering in because I want to be the first person there. I want to be that hero. I want to solve it. Like I want to make a difference. And then you start getting addicted to that like that adrenaline dump of like, oh, I felt like on fire when I was there. I was like, this was a great call. I like that. I felt great. Like you're sitting there, you're breathing heavy. And all you did was walk from your patrol car to the mailbox, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. And then you go into an office environment, and it's like, where am I getting that adrenaline? I don't like. I get it. Like I just have road rage now. Like that's about it.
It's so good. That is so good. That's good.
So how could the like do you have any tips for how like best to kind of turn that energy from sort of that outward I'm helping the community back to that inward like I it's time to focus on me or my family or friends or how can someone make that transition? And I guess that's kind of the crux of like this whole topic here is especially since you did such a great job of identifying like really what the underlying issue is, how do you begin to kind of become a normal human being after doing a job like this?
Well, I don't know if you'll ever become a normal human being after doing a job like this because of just the sheer amount of exposure of like crazy stuff that you get exposed to. But I will say the first thing is like, finding a network of those people that have done the same exact thing that you're doing, right? Like that's part of the reason why I love working at Flock is because there's 101 other folks that are at this company that have experienced the same exact change that I've went through.
Cool.
And I think it's really great when you get that network established because then you have a safety net of when you have those bad days mentally of like, there's somebody that I can think of right now off the top of my head that I always message and I'm like, I'm having a shit day today. And they're like, cool, let's talk about it. What is it?
Cool.
Is it work? Is it personal? And then if it's work, then it's like, you've been here longer than me. Please help me like understand why we're doing this workflow, why we're doing this process the way that we're doing it. So then that way I can put myself at ease of like, okay, is it me? Do I just not have the skill set? Or is this like something that is just I need to learn as I go along because I'm experiencing growing pains in a new career? And I think having that safety net and that network really
Yeah.
helps establish that like that baseline of what is normal, what is not normal. And then when you're having those not normal situations, then you have those folks that you can lean on to say like, hey, let's work through this and let's do some discovery around this of like why we're experiencing these emotions and like how can we mitigate this and find a way to resolve it because that's what we do is in law enforcement we are problem solvers and
Yes.
the only thing that we don't do really well with problem solving is following our own advice on how to solve problems. And so having that network out there is
Yeah.
very helpful to hear the same exact advice that you'd be giving yourself back to you from somebody else.
So true.
Um, and I would also say the other aspect is like law enforcement consumes a huge portion of your life and it consumes a huge portion of your day-to-day activities because you get 2 days off a week, you get 1 day off a week, whatever it may be, and now all of a sudden you're free after 5 o'clock and you have nothing to do on the weekends. And it's like, well, now you have that time. You need to figure out what makes you excited? What gives you energy? And for me, it's like helping people and like doing things and giving that service back to somebody else. And so like now I'm taking up, donating blood. I'm taking up like going to animal shelters to like provide time to dogs. Like that's just something, those are things that I like doing and
They're
that sort
nice.
of gives me a sense of purpose outside of my work. And I
Yeah.
like I cannot say that like I am the most perfect person in terms of like figuring out that balance because I'm still figuring it out myself. But those are some things that like I've done to help mitigate or like put myself in a better space mentally about that purpose and that drive that I had when I was in law enforcement and how I can translate that over to the corporate like environment.
That is awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I
Very well
am
said.
excited Yeah, I mean, it's very well said, and I'm hoping that you guys help all the people. If I'm ever in need, I'm gonna hit you up.
Please.
Um, I hope to not be in need because I got like fired or something, but I just because I don't know if you'd be able to help with that one. But anyway,
No, but I'm always a listening ear. So
no, I'm not hiring you at Flock. Don't even ask. Nice, got it, understood. No, but seriously, we've been trying to work this out for a few weeks, and I'm so glad we finally got you on the show and your patience with all of the, trying to juggle the scheduling. It was an absolute pleasure. I hope that we can get you back on the show and maybe do an update at some point, or if there's something else that we didn't cover, you can hit me up and we can work you back into the schedule because this was really good. This was good information. Very
yeah,
good information.
I don't know if we're still going, but I will. I'm glad that you invited me. Like, I'm glad that Amanda reached out and was like, "Hey, can you want to touch base with Erica and do a podcast about it?" Because I also think like this isn't really about just the ERG, right? This is about like mental health within law enforcement, and that's something that I'm like a huge advocate of. It is like you don't realize the detriment of not taking care of your mental health in law enforcement until after you're done with law enforcement, because that's what happened to me, where I said like, I need to go to therapy, I need to get myself taken care of, because I didn't take care of myself mentally when I was in law enforcement, and I let all of those incidents, I pushed them down and I pushed them down and I pushed them down. And then now that like my body's like I'm not in a state of fight or flight anymore, I think about those things. And my like there I live where I used to work, and I see signs all the time. Every time I drive around the city, every time I drive places, like there was an incident there. There's a memorial for an officer there that was killed. And I never like I didn't think it was affecting me, and then I left law enforcement and I had the time for my body to relax. And then that's when things were like, we're here and you never took care of us and you need to take care of us now. And my body was like, I don't have a choice. I have to, or else I'm going to, I don't know what's going to happen. And I needed to take the steps to take care of myself. And like, so I hope like the message that some folks get out of this is like, mental health is incredibly important, especially in law enforcement. And you need to take care of yourself, because if you ever decide to leave law enforcement, I don't want anybody to go through the same experience that I went through, because it's hard. It's really hard. It's devastating. And I don't want to ever see anybody go through the same exact experience that I did. So the more education that I can do on it of like prevention, the better.
Nice.
Very well said. Very well said.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that has been Chris Howell with Flock Security, discussing how he assists others with a quasi-peer support system to help those that are moving from a law enforcement profession into the private sector, where apparently you don't have to worry about getting shot or stabbed every day. Who knew?
No.
Well, Chris, we thank you so much for joining us and taking the time out of your weekend to spend with us and share your message. Thank you very much on that, sir.
Absolutely happy to do it, and very appreciative of you guys inviting me to your podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We hope to have you on again. And we hope that all of you enjoyed today's topic and hopefully gathered something from it. And if you were at all concerned about what you're going to do once your law enforcement career passes, know that there's help out there, people to talk to help with that and to ease that, ease any of those concerns that you may have.
Yep.
If you've got any stories like that, please make sure you either shoot us an email to lifeline911podcast@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please make sure that you like and subscribe as well. From all of us at Lifeline 911, I'm Gary.
I'm Erica.
And we will see you next week.
Thank you for watching our production of Lifeline 911. If you have any questions about today's topic or topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please reach out to us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. This has been a production of Lifeline 911 Podcast, copyright 2025. From all of us at Lifeline, stay safe out there. And until next time, this is Lifeline 911 signing off.